Christian, talk about the offense today. I mean, second scrimmage, how did you improve from last week?
Well, we definitely took a step, forward because, last week we started off really good. We moved the ball, we scored, did some good things in the red zone. But then, they started to gain momentum and they shut us down like the last 9 drives of the scrimmage. Then Wednesday, we had a little mini scrimmage at the end of practice, and they sort of took it to us. We were sloppy. We didn't have that energy that we usually have. So Coach Montgomery got us after practice that day and said, you know what, we better come out and we better take it to him. So we had that in our minds. We felt good when we woke up this morning, and we really want to take it to him. We came out with the energy we needed this year, that we're going to need this year. If we play like we do today, we're going to be a really dangerous team on offense.
Talk about that third down situational today. Coach said you guys struggled a little bit with those third and mediums. Was that what happened there, and then how do you correct it?
I don't even, to be honest with you, I'm in a loss of mind right now. I can't even remember the third downs right now, but I think it's just little fundamental things, like especially on pass plays. Some of the receivers, we might lose fundamental. We might take an outside release when we should take an inside release. Little things like that. We get them corrected. It shouldn't be a problem. It's just little things, and mental mistakes. We get rid of them, we'll be fine.
I think one of them was a pinky sack on Kurt, though.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You can't touch the quarterback. So if they get close to him, they're gonna blow the whistle. Even though Kurt's a big boy and he's mobile, and I don't think that would bring him down that easily.
Let's talk about your familiarity with Kurt. I mean, do you guys at least know what you're doing?
Yeah, Kurt is an extremely smart player. He's a student of the game. He understands, I think, all of us receivers in some sort of way. He can tell. I think he knows by how fast each and every one of us are. How we run our routes. He knows which one of us is going to get to certain areas faster than others. So he knows. And I think just by getting I think last year really helped us out, get familiar with each other and all the receivers. That he knows that all right, when he's going to run a shallow route, a 10-yard out, I know he's going to be out. 1, 2, 3, boom. I know he's going to be there. So I just think, having all of us receivers back, and us getting to work with him every single day, and also our receiver coach, Coach Coleman and Coach Montgomery, they teach us up. They coach us up great. Without them, we wouldn't be able to have that connection. I think all of us receivers and Kurt.
You sound really excited about the way that you guys played today. Is this how you can always play? And how long have you seen it coming, that you were just waiting for it to just come together?
Well, there's no reason why we shouldn't be like this every single day in and out. If we see that sky's the limit for us on offense. We have every single guy back on offense. We broke school records last year, but we're not satisfied with that. We always have that attitude that we need to get better every single day. And that's how Coach Montgomery, Coach Coleman, Coach Priscillo, Coach Matsakis, all the coaches coach us up. We're never satisfied. But yeah, we see that. Last year we seen the success we had, and we knew not looking forward. We weren't trying to look ahead last year, but we knew we're doing this good now. Imagine next year, and years to come. But we're focused on this year right now, one day at a time. We treat every day like it's a game. If we keep doing the things we did today, we're going to be dangerous. And like I said, sky's the limit for us.
Going into next week, what's the focus being the last week of spring?
Well, we're still going to stay, focused. I think we still have to install on Monday. We still got some stuff to put in on offense, and I'm sure the defense too. We're getting excited for that spring game. That's when the lights are on. We're going to be in our uniforms that day. So we want to continue the same success that we had today. I want to put up 40, 50, 60, 70 points on the board. Not getting overconfident and cocky with myself, but that's the way we want to be, and that's how it should be. So we're going to stay focused. We're not going to just because it's the last week, it's probably going to be a little bit easier than it was, but that doesn't mean we're still not going to have an up tempo. We're still not going to work hard. Because we're still practicing hard. And, we're treating it like we're playing in a national championship come Friday.
What was the penalty for?
A false start. I got a little anxious. I jumped. I moved a little bit at the line, and when you're in the red zone, you can't make penalties like that. And Coach Coleman got on me, and I need him to get on me like that. Because he always says when he was a player, when I was on edge, I always played at my best. And him getting in me a little bit right there, made me wake up. You know what I mean? I need that. When he's constantly on me, it's gonna make me better. Like I said, he played at the top level of competition in football. I have to listen to him. If I want to get better, I need him to get into me like that. And all of us receivers, I'd be stupid to think I know more than him. You know what I mean? Because the guy's done it at every single level he's played at. So I'm going to continue to listen to him. You know, I'm doing things now that I thought I'd never be able to do because of him. You know, so I'm thankful I have him, and I hope he's like that every single day with me.